Welcome, I'm Ijoma Onyaso. Tonight, National Judicial Council recommends the extension of tenure of Justice Walter Onnoghen as Acting Chief Justice of the Federation by 3 months. Economic and Financial Crimes Commission arraigns Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Dele Belgore, and former Minister of National Planning, Abubakar Sulaiman, on a 5-count charge bordering on money laundering. 7 Russian sailors and their Ukrainian counterparts are abducted along Nigeria's waterways by suspected pirates. And Somalian MPs elect a Somali U.S. national, Mohamed Farmajo, as the country's new president in an election held in an aircraft hangar.
On business news tonight, the Senate approves federal government's request for $1 billion Eurobond sale. On sports news tonight, Nigeria's Football Federation confirms Senegalese test for Super Eagles ahead of 2018 World Cup qualifiers.
I am Maokwe Ogun, and from Abuja, the federal government reiterates its position that President Muhammadu Buhari is hale and hearty.
We begin tonight from Abuja, where the National Judicial Council has recommended the extension of the tenure of Justice Walter Onnoghen to the President as the Acting Chief Justice of Nigeria by another 3 months. The NJC, which made the announcement this evening, says it took the decision in view of the fact that it may be impossible for the Senate, which is currently on recess, to reconvene and screen Justice Onnoghen before Friday, when his constitutional 3-month tenure as acting CJN would expire. This is coming a few hours after the acting presidency submitted Justice Onnoghen's name to the Senate for confirmation as Chief Justice of Nigeria. If confirmed by the upper legislative chamber, Justice Onnoghen would be the first CJN from the southern part of the country in about 30 years. This is coming 3 months after Justice Onnoghen was first appointed to the position in acting capacity by President Muhammadu Buhari. But the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has arraigned a Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Dele Belgore, at the Federal High Court in Lagos on charges bordering on money laundering. Mr. Belgore, a former PDP governorship candidate in Kwara State, was arraigned on a 5-count charge alongside a former Minister of National Planning, Professor of Political Science and International Relations, Professor Abubakar Sulaiman. Our judiciary correspondent Shola Shoyele reports.
For about 2 weeks, the defendants were guests of the EFCC, answering questions on what is believed to be an alleged 450 million naira 2015 presidential campaign fund, which the commission believes they conspired to keep. From the custody of the EFCC, they were taken to the Federal High Court in Lagos to face a 5-count charge prepared against them. In the first count, the EFCC accused them of conspiring to directly take possession of the money, which they reasonably ought to have known forms part of the proceeds of an unlawful act. The 5th charge accuses them of making a cash payment of 50 million naira to one Sheriff Shagaya without going through a financial institution. The EFCC says the charges are contrary to and punishable under certain sections of the Money Laundering Prohibition Amendment Act of 2012. Before Justice Rilwan Aikawa, the senior advocate and the former minister pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Mr. Belgore's counsel, Ebun Shofunde SAN, is one of his partners at their law firm. Mr. Shofunde asked the court to grant his client bail on self-recognizance. He submitted that Mr. Belgore, being a senior advocate of Nigeria since 2001, was not likely to jump bail given his standing. Professor Sulaiman's lawyer, Chief Bolaji Ayorinde SAN, also made a similar application. He told the court that his client is a renowned educationist who has graduated more than 10,000 students and has also served the country as a minister. Counsel to the EFCC, Rotimi Oyedepo, did not oppose the bail applications, preferring instead to leave the issue to the court's discretion. In his ruling, Justice Aikawa granted the defendants bail on self-recognizance. He, however, asked that their international passports be deposited with the Deputy Chief Registrar of the court. Commencement of trial was then fixed for the 23rd of February. Shola Shoyele, Channels Television News.
Staying with legal matters, the federal government has tendered as evidence in the Federal High Court in Abuja items allegedly recovered from the residence of Justice Adeniyi Ademola by the Department of State Services. The items include firearms and cash of up to 54 million naira and some foreign currency. The prosecution counsel, CJN Jegede, through the exhibit keeper of the DSS, Umar Ahmed, who was called as a witness, presented the items before Justice Jude Okeke. Our correspondent Onnoghen Nadi reports.
The trial of Justice Adeniyi Ademola and two others commenced Wednesday with a fresh application by the prosecution counsel, CJN Jegede, seeking leave of court to amend the charges against the defendants to enable him file additional list of witnesses. The application was granted by the trial judge, Justice Jude Okeke, leading to an 18-count charge to which the three defendants pleaded not guilty when the charges were read to them.
There is another count, the count 18, which is giving false information against Justice Ademola.
The proceedings picked up pace with the presentation of two witnesses, a staff of Guaranteed Trust Bank, Malik Olatunde, and the exhibit keeper of the Department of State Services, Umar Ahmed, who listed items recovered from the residence of the first defendant, Justice Adeniyi Ademola. The prosecution presented these items as exhibits before the court, among which are 2 pump-action rifles, 1 pack of red-haired cartridges and 10 pieces of white-haired cartridges, as well as different bundles of cash totaling 54 million naira, $121,279, 4,400 euros, 80 pounds, and 1,000 Indian rupees. Presiding Judge Justice Okeke, with the agreement of all counsels, ordered that the cash recoveries be handed over to the Director of Litigations of the FCT High Court, Madugu Muhammad, for safekeeping, who should deposit same in the bank and provide evidence of the deposit to the court.
It was so apparent in the court today that it was a hectic day. All the exhibits were brought into court, and we were able to take all the exhibits as proper exhibits in court.
After nearly 7 hours, 2 prosecution witnesses and the admission of exhibits before the court by the prosecution team, the matter is adjourned to Thursday, February 9, when the prosecution team is expected to call 3 more out of the remaining 5 witnesses before they can close their case. Onnoghen Nadi, Channels Television News.
Well, staying with the courts, at this time, a former Minister of Finance, Nenadi Usman, has asked the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos to grant her permission to travel abroad for medical treatment. In an application put before Justice Muslim Hassan, Mrs. Usman said doctors at the National Hospital in Abuja recommended that she receives further treatment abroad after suffering a relapse following surgery. The application, however, could not be heard because the judge ruled that he would first consider a pending application filed by the other defendants challenging the court's jurisdiction. Mrs. Usman is standing trial alongside a former Minister of Aviation, Chief Fani-Kayode, a former national chairman of the Association of Local Government of Nigeria, Mr. Yusuf Danjuma, and a company said to belong to him, Joint Trust Dimensions Nigeria Limited. They were all arraigned on a 17-count charge of laundering of about 4.9 billion naira, to which they pleaded not guilty.
We had 2 applications, one of which borders on the health of our client, who has had a scheduled medical emergency procedure in America since January. We filed the motion 2nd of December in the hope that when the matter was coming up around 8th, the court to consider it. We are not asking for anything than for the court to relax the condition of her bail so that she can have her passport to travel on condition that she can go and come back and resubmit back to the court. But even though the prosecution did not file anything against that application, which you took to mean that because of the health implications, but we are surprised today they are insisting that no, they are going to oppose and that the motion should not be taken until our challenge to jurisdiction of our venue is taken.
You are challenging my lord's jurisdiction. You are saying the court should fold his arm. That your lordship does not have the power to hear the case. And at the same time, you want my lord to now grant you an order allowing you to travel out of the country. How does that stand? How does that work out? So the defense created the circumstances that played out today. So they should not blame anybody for it.
And the trial of the Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki at the Code of Conduct Tribunal in Abuja has been stalled following the filing of an 18-count further amended charge against him. The Senate President is expected to take a fresh plea to the amended charges on February the 23rd, as the defense team led by Mr. Kanu Agabi objected to the plea being taken today on the ground that his client needs time to study the amended charges. Based on his arguments, the chairman of the tribunal adjourned the case to February the 23rd for a fresh arraignment.
We tender several exhibits through webcasts, and we discovered so many pieces of evidence that we advance the case of the prosecution. So in line with the evidence that we got, we need to bring those facts in line with the charge. So that's why we amended it. And they shouldn't even make an heavyweight out of it. We are not introducing anything new. It's just to simplify it and make the court get what the charge, that are the allegation in the charge, and the evidence before the court. It shouldn't be a big. It can even be done even after the closure of prosecution's case, or even during the defense.
We had no notice of this. We came prepared to continue with the hearing, as you know, and halfway through the witnesses' evidence, we became aware of the fact that fresh charges had been filed without prior notice. And a cursory glance at the charges and the new bent of the witnesses' evidence showed that there had been substantial changes to the charges that had just been filed. Some of the charges that had been problematic to them, the ones that showed that they had probably tampered with the defendant's forms, they've surreptitiously removed them to make that argument supposedly difficult to make anymore. But it doesn't change the fact that the exhibits remain the same.
Away from the courts now, the committee set up by the federal government to look into food security in Nigeria has identified high cost of transportation as being responsible for the hike in the prices of food in the country. According to the Minister of Agriculture, Chief Ogbe, the interim report showed that the cost of transportation has become extremely high. The committee then recommended the use of railway wagons on the current network, which it considers to be cheaper, insisting that there is no real food shortage in the country.
1 week after crying out on behalf of Nigerians about hike in the cost of food items, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and the cabinet members have received a feedback from the task force set up on food security in the country.
One of the things we found out is that the cost of transportation has become extremely high, especially because of the fact that most of our transportation is by road. Diesel prices have gone up, and trucks are finding it difficult to move from place to place at the old prices. So we've considered the following alternatives: using railway wagons along the current railway network.
The Federal Executive Council also approved a set of measures to boost production and attract investment into the Nigerian tomato subsector to encourage farmers and small businesses.
These measures will include things we're doing to make sure we farm tomato around the year, things like greenhouse equipment, making sure that they can come in without any barriers or duties. And they also include the use of both tariff and non-tariff measures to address an issue Nigerians are extremely concerned about, which is in dumping of products here, issues around quality and the standards of what to consume. I think the government has a responsibility to its people.
Council also approved the construction of Section 1 of the Ilori-Umaro-Kaba Road to link Kwara and Kogi states at the cost of 21 billion naira. The Minister of Power, Works and Housing debunks rumors by media that his ministry awarded the contract to the tune of 166 billion naira.
Contracts as low as 500 million, less than a billion, have to come to council. So do contracts that exceed that amount. So and I'm sure that well-meaning and right-thinking Nigerians know better. But it's important just to say that In the face of this premium lies, it is important just to emphasize what is going on.
He also got approval for consultancy services for line route studies and environmental social impact assessment for the government to access Japanese loan to support TCN to continue the transmission grid expansion program in some parts of the country. Chukwuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, 7 Russian sailors and their Ukrainian counterparts abducted along Nigeria's waterways. That's in a moment. Do join us again.